Welcome to another edition of Toca Backstage. This is Chris Wolf, the Executive Director of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation. It is my extreme pleasure to be speaking with Brother Yusef, who will be performing in the Studio Cabaret coming up real quick on March 6th and 7th. Showtimes are at 7:30. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate this very much.
So I had the pleasure of seeing you some years back, and I have to say, your performance then, as it continues to be, was just so engaging that it has never actually left my mind. So I have to ask, where does all that come from? Is it just all passion inside? Is it just a history of the blues that you carry with you?
A lot of that, a lot of the history that I take a lot of pride in. It's a lot of passion. It's a lot of pain, whether it be the pain in my life or whether it be the pain from years back, from, ancestors and stories from grandparents and so on and so forth. But it's a lot. It's a lot of passion. It's just something inside me that just eventually had to come out one way or the other. And that's how I did it.
And you picked music. Well, that's great, because your performances are always awesome. So tell me, why did you pick the blues instead of like rock and roll or pop or?
Well, okay, the story is interesting. I had, when high school, because I wanted to play when I was 10 years old, but that's a whole nother story right there. But when I finally got to a place where I can actually do it, I didn't start playing until I was 19. In high school, I hooked up with a dear friend of mine, and he turned me on to music. And I said, wow. And he introduced me to all kinds of music, from John Coltrane to Bob Marley to Miles, to everything. And he inspired, because he also had a piano in his garage, and he inspired me to want to pick it up again after what happened to me when I was younger. And it was through that inspiration that I said, oh, I want to play music. And I wanted to play reggae, and I wanted to play jazz and funk and all the stuff that he would play for me. But I figured I'd have to learn how to play the blues first, because as we all know, that's the basis of music in our culture, modern music.
Right.
And I learned how to play the blues. I went and bought a guitar. Like, I was 19 years old. I got my first guitar. I started learning how to play the blues, and I would play stuff for people. And people would say, wow, I would play, check out this reggae thing I'm doing. And they say, that's pretty cool. Or check out this funk thing I'm doing. And they say, that's pretty cool. But then I play some blues for them. They say, what's that? I said, that's the blues. They're like, oh, I like that. So I said, I like that attention. I'm going to stick with that. So that's
awesome. It's interesting, because I've heard the blues used in a number of different genres. It's like jazz, for example. Mm-hmm. Jazz is like, you ask one person what jazz is, they'll give you one. You ask 10 different people, they'll give you 10 different explanations of what jazz is. For you, what is the blues?
My message, and it's a message that I carry with me everywhere I go, but my message is basically, and I will talk about this on stage, is, for me, blues is freedom and healing. Blues is one of the elements that has allowed African Americans to survive life in the United States historically. After slavery, after Reconstruction, we're free, and yet we're not free. So not only we're not free, we're almost taken right back into slavery. And this is the music that we use, even though it may not have been called blues, but this is the music we use as a humanity that would not allow us to have a humanity. Here's a society that tells you you're nothing, you're nobody, you can't do nothing, you're less than human. But yet we are able to express our humanity through this music and heal ourselves and find freedom and solace in this music. Whether that we play the music on a Saturday night, whether we play it in the fields through the week, or whether we play it on Sunday morning at church, it's still that same thing. And this is before it became professionalized. And then eventually folks figured, oh, we can make money expressing our humanity. Imagine that. And then, so that's why it is just so, that's like almost my message to the world. Blues is healing and freedom. Yeah.
And going back to what you said, I know that, I don't know. I believe the blues started from the African American culture, but then I know like there are other blues artists who, like Stevie Ray Vaughan and the gentleman who I first saw you with, Stan West, who we've actually had perform for us before. Is that another way of just the African American experience being taken away from them, or is that a shared thing?
Well, first of all, Black people were not allowed to, we didn't really share much. I think they were just taken from us. So we had no choice in the matter. But I will add to that, music is for everybody. So I can learn how to play Celtic music if I want to, being an African-American male, because I like the music. And if I want to play that music, I can play that music as long as I give credit to the people who created it. If I want to play mariachi music, which is from Latin culture, Mexico, I can play that music. It's music is free for everyone to partake, and that's what it's designed for. It's a culture expressing their humanity and say, "Oh, I like that. I want to do that too." But the key is giving credit to the culture that created the music and making sure that it's understood. This is where it came from. So, like when you go to a museum and you see a painting on the wall from, a certain period and of a certain artist, and you'll see a placard that will explain to you who, what, where, why, and when, and how.
Right.
That's, if you learn classical music, you must learn, if you learn about Beethoven or Bach or any of those cats, you must learn about the culture that produced, the artist that produced that music. For some reason with blues, it gets lost. Blues did such a good job of freeing and healing people that it influenced everything that came after it, because it had to do such a good job at that. So when anybody other than African American people play the music, you look at it on two different levels. The question is asked to me, because I've done a lot of lectures on this. The question is asked to me, are white people appropriating the music? I say, well, if credit is not given to the original artist, proper credit is not given to the original artist, then yeah, it becomes a level of appropriation and disrespect. If credit is given to the artist and it's made known, this is where this music comes from, the Rolling Stones did a good job for the most part of telling you where this music came from. So that needs to be understood. So music is for everybody. I love playing reggae music. I'm not from Jamaica. I'm not from that culture. So I'm borrowing from that culture, even though it's an African code base. It's actually reggae is a blues based music, but just the same, culturally speaking, I will be borrowing from that culture. Right. And presenting the music. But I best give credit to people like Burning Spear, Bob Marley, Jimmy Cliff, and the Skatalites, and going way back. So that I think that's key to understanding. And sadly, what I feel happens is that'll sometimes get lost in the audience. So we all know Stevie Ray Vaughan did Texas Flood, but we all don't know Larry Arkansas Davis wrote the song. So we don't know that. We need to know that so that we can fully appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? So that's my take on it.
Well, and I think that's really appropriate, because I mean, it's like you said, music is for everyone. And I mean, it doesn't really matter who created it, because it'll affect, I mean, it does matter who created it, but it affects everybody differently. Right. I know when I listen to the blues, it's almost cathartic. It's like healing almost.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And I don't know why that is. Why it's like you're listening to somebody pour their heart out about the pain and woe, but it's almost making you feel better. Why do you suppose that is?
Well, again, freedom and healing, expressing one's humanity. Anytime you express your humanity or express yourself in the deepest way, it's gonna heal. When you feel sad or upset or mad, you're gonna scream, you're gonna cry, you're gonna lash out, and that's just a way of just expressing the inner thing and getting it out. And once you get it out, oh, I'm cool. You're cool for that moment. Until the next whatever happens. So, so it's so again, and the fact that it does that to you means blues has done its job. It was born out of that necessity, and everybody who hears it has the same feeling. You know, I'm amazed that I can do blues shows, and I'm saying even if I sing a sad song, even though people say that my blues is happy, but I've sung sad songs, everyone's just clapping and laughing. It's doing its job. You know, it's not blues is not bummer music. It's not like, oh, you know, it's not melancholy. It's just feeling. I'm feeling this. Check it out. And I'm having
Yeah.
fun. Forget your troubles and dance. You know, you're dancing to the rhythms of the sufferer. So, you know, that's that, excuse me. That's how I see it. So
I find it funny that people say that your blues are happy. It's like happy blues is kind of an odd.
you know, it's just you might have a sad message with this upbeat rhythm going side by side, that yin and yang thing going on. It's just a completeness of it all. You know,
Yeah, well, it's almost like pop music, and pop music. They're talking about breaking up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, but it's like in a happy, poppy tune. It's like, again, like you said, you're dealing with somebody's pain and suffering, but the music.
If you think about comedians, think about somebody like Richard Pryor, who talked about his life, and if you took the funny out of it, it's a pretty tragic existence.
Right.
But again, someone like a Richard Pryor, or even modern comedians that I see today who are born out of that, who are talking about their pain and their anger and and they, again, you're bringing it out, and you're pulling the irony of the whole thing out, and humans express humanity so that they can just continue. So we're all not jumping off a bridge at the same time, or killing each other,
Yeah.
Something else just came to mind. But yeah, that's probably, I mean, when we think about it, after slavery, after Reconstruction, there was this great fear of African-American people, especially in the South, because in some areas, the Black population was larger than the white population. And there was a fear like, oh, there's going to be retribution. But no, we want to be a part of this. At the same time, this music, this articulate expression allows us to be more optimistic about life, have hope, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to go down this road, but it would just be nice if everybody if there was like, I don't know, no color, but just music. It's like, because the music is like, it's like you said, it's healing. It's.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I agree. It would be lovely. It would be great. I would love to live in a world where it did not matter. And I have to be concerned. I have to be concerned with that from a day-to-day existence.
Sure.
But it's always in the back of your head, like, okay, this, how's it going to play out today? It would be great to live in that world. Again, but there's always, the African-American community has always had hope. That is why we always went to church. That is why we always are loyal to family. That is why we reach out to other people and say, hey, come on, let's, that's always been the thing for us. And we have always freely given of our art, whether it's music or dance or the way we dress, and the funny thing is, you have blues and you have hip hop. Hip hop was born out of the same conditions. But if you look at today's culture, hip hop has influenced this society and the world in the same ways: fashion, with language, with music. Again, you have poor people of color, giving of their souls to the world, and everyone comes in and joins it, and everyone's the better for it, so.
Well, yeah, amen. So I'm curious, did you start out, excuse me, wanting to do just all solo stuff, or were you ever a part of a band? Because
yeah, I had a group a few years back. My group was really a drummer, a washboard player, and myself. That was the biggest band I ever had. I used to play a lot of jam sessions when I would go out to play, and that was a lot of fun. I think it was listening to Lightning Hopkins is what did it for me, because I used to try to mimic him the most, and I like the way especially when he did solo. It's like, oh, I like that. I just started doing that more and more. And I noticed that it was because what I noticed with a lot of bands is not a lot of folks are bringing new stuff to the table. It's kind of got a little stagnated this is my opinion. It's kind of got a little stagnated. It's the same formula. And I'm trying to do something. I always like music that's someone where an artist takes just a little bit in different direction, or go over here, try this, mix that with this. I love that stuff. So
Yeah.
I grew up on funk. I grew up on soul. I grew up on R&B. I didn't necessarily grow up on blues in the traditional, like Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters. I didn't grow up on that stuff. I grew up on Donny Hathaway, Aretha Franklin, Al Green, Parliament Funkadelic, Rick James when I was a teenager. My grandparents taking my brothers and I to church when we would go visit them in Bakersfield. I was born in Bakersfield. Sorry about that. I was born, but we moved to LA. But I would always go visit my grandparents, and they were sanctified folks, and they would take us to church. And the church, in the holiness church, the music was just intense and boisterous and just in your face. Again, people getting filled with the Holy Spirit, just getting it out. I asked my mom one day, I said, why are the adults acting that way? Because as a kid, it scared me. And she said, you know what? When you're Black in America, you need that one day to purge. You need to get it all out. And that, again, so that's what I grew up on. When I finally took to the blues, because I wanted to learn how to play all the music I liked, I got to the blues. I incorporated all of that. I like music with edge, hardcore, in your face. I like hardcore funk. I like that kind of stuff. James Brown, So that's more or less my approach to this music. I don't want to be a museum piece. I want to kind of borrow a little bit from the past, borrow a little bit from the present, and try to make something cool, and that's who I am, just figuring a way to do things. So yeah.
Well, and you do it exceptionally well, I have to
Thank
say.
you. And by the way, and this mix of styles that I do, or a mix of way that I perform the blues, is a style I call Fattback blues. And if you're from the South, you know what Fattback is. Some people don't know. I know people from California don't know what Fattback is. Fattback, just think about that good Southern salt pork cooking, that's in the food. So it's a flavor. So I'm trying to present all these different flavors within this music. So try to make it as heavy and as intense, and I'm not playing around. Person once told me I have a punk rock approach to blues. So,
That's an interesting analogy.
Yeah, he just said that. I was like, oh, okay. But Sanctified Church is almost like a punk rock approach, because it's just like, go, start the key, 0 to 100, and then you're off and running,
So when people come to see your show, and you really do pour your heart out during the whole thing, what do you want them to walk away with? What are you hoping to inspire people with?
Hopefully I'm helping people to make people feel better. Let's try to get through the day, one day at a time. I want, hopefully, that they have a better understanding of the music, and it's not just the music where you just listen. I want my audience to be a little more informed, or a little more intelligent about the way you're going to approach the blues, and with a hopefully a little bit better understanding of the African American culture through the music. To understand that this pleasure that you are getting comes from a lot of pain. The fruits, you have the fruits of the struggle, but I want you to understand the roots of the struggle, so that you can appreciate the fruits of the struggle a little bit more. So that's always been my approach when I perform. I want to give you this. And if you're willing to talk to me, then I'll say, hey, this is what it is. This is what it came from. And this is why it's important even today, even though we don't play it as much, especially African Americans, we don't play the music as much anymore, because we tend to move on to the next thing. And then we move on to the next thing, because it's probably commercially speaking, because, you had African Americans playing what was R&B and rock and roll at the time, and then Elvis comes along, and then okay, we got to move on to something else, and then it gets reappropriated, and we got to move on, and we got to move on, you know, and basically, and I said before, hip hop. If blues was a medicine for healing, hip hop is a stronger medicine for today's healing for African American people. So I just want people to have that, hopefully have that understanding and just feel better and understand everyone has humanity and it matters to everybody.
It's interesting because going back to what you just said, do you think the blues are being lost? Because it's like you said that everything is there, you know, the music has changed. You've had to sort of adapt to the current times. But do you think that it's like you don't see, you hear about a lot of blues anymore?
Well, that's the marketplace, I guess, you know. I don't think it's getting lost, especially in the African American community. I do big issue when I see a blues festival and you don't have any Black artists on the bill, much less a headliner. I really take an issue with that, and I've seen that happen, and I've been very vocal. But a lot of, you know, you got people like Christone Kingfish Ingram from Mississippi. You have Cedric Burnside. You have Mr. Sip. You have all these guys from the South. You have Marquise Knox. You have all these young Black blues artists, and there are many more who are still doing the culture or still doing the music in its more raw or blues form. So it's still there. You know, it's just the marketplace for some reason will not bring us in to the picture on a prominent level. You know, I've even seen a blues festival where the headliner was, you know, go figure. I mean, but so it might be getting lost in the marketplace, you know.
And I think too, maybe it's because it's sad. I hate to say it, but all the artists you just named, I haven't heard of.
Oh,
and I do like the blues, although I don't follow it as much as I'd like. But it's it's almost like if one prominent artist in today could talk about the blues or at least acknowledge it, maybe people would go back and listen to some of it.
See, yeah, maybe. I mean, I've even heard Prince play some blues tunes.
Yeah,
and it's just like, whoa. But you know, I can see. I mean, and I don't have all the answers, and this is just my perspective from a personal experience from being a Black man in the U.S. and as well as just my observation of society as a whole. It's very frustrating. But like, for instance, I mentioned Kingfish, Christone. I would have to say he's only 21 years old. He was a prodigy. He started playing at 15 professionally. I would have to say he's probably one of the best top electric players alive today. And you're right. A lot of people haven't heard of him. And I asked him, I met him and I've talked to him before, and I've asked him, I said, so have you played with Clapton or Jeff Beck or anybody like that? He said, no. He said, the highest I've gone was Mr. Guy, Buddy. He says, that's the highest. How high can you go? That is the highest. That is the pinnacle of electric playing, Buddy Guy, as far as modern day. But, you know, but we think of people like Clapton or those other cats are the highest, but it's just, Kingfish should be known to the world. He's that strong. Buddy Guy should be considered the pinnacle because he's the guy that influenced Jimmy, you know. So these are things that need to be talked about. And again, this part goes back to the frustration. This goes back to living in a society that dubbed Elvis the king of a style of music he did not create. Because as Sam Phillips once said, if you can find a white artist, if you can find a white man with a Negro feel, I can make $1 billion. And he didn't say that from a racist perspective. He said that from a business perspective. because Sam Phillips was interested in recording. He recorded Wolf, Howlin' Wolf. He recorded Ike Turner. He recorded Bobby Bland. He was really into recording Black artists, but he caught a lot of flack for that. His community said, why are you recording all these Black people? What's the problem? So Elvis comes in, and Elvis, who, as we know historically, hung out in juke joints, hung out in the Black church, who absorbed the music. And again, nothing wrong with Elvis as a man or an artist, because his art is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But the marketplace and the society put him up there. And that's kind of been our story since then and before, you know. So there's nothing wrong with a white artist playing our music. There's something wrong when a white artist plays our music and gets all the credit for it.
Yeah.
And doesn't reach back or doesn't explain to his audience and educate them. That's why I say I want my audience to be educated, and doesn't educate the audience. This is where the music you're listening to that I'm playing came from. And these are the artists that I appreciate. You know, his two biggest hits came from Black artists. That's All Right Mama and Hound Dog.
Right.
You know, so again,
Oh.
There we go.
It kind of goes back. I had this theory about the film industry,
Yeah.
which is kind of like it's the suits that make the deal or the decisions. So subsequently, if you have a movie about, I don't know, a superhero,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes $1 billion, then it's pretty much guaranteed that the film industry is going to go down that path and make nothing but superhero movies. Similarly, with music, if you have a 14-year-old girl who likes to mumble a lot at a piano and it makes $1 million, that's the music you're going to get, and that's what's going to be fed to the American people,
Right.
as opposed to finding new artists and finding what's relevant and passionate out there, and or learning about some of the old stuff. I mean, it took me a little while, but I'd finally discovered Howlin' Wolf and some of the other, but it really takes an effort to sort of learn about it and discover it, as opposed to just having it freely available out there.
Yeah. As long as there's that bias that exists, again, if you have the bias in the film industry, why do we not have more female directors?
Right.
I'm in an industry where talent is secondary. James Brown once said music is 30-70. 70% business, 30% talent. Talent is almost secondary. It's almost third. It's just not even really an issue. Because you got some phenomenal musicians. We'll never have another Jimi Hendrix or John Coltrane again. Not that they don't exist, but they'll never be propped up to that level. And
right.
It's just because it's too easy to have a bunch of young white girls who sound the same. And you can't tell. It's not like when you heard Aretha on the front or Gladys Knight or Patti LaBelle, you knew exactly who you were hearing, or Janice, you knew exactly who you were hearing. Now, who is that? I don't know. Let's look it up. You know what I'm saying? Now you don't even know who's who. No one's distinct. Very few people are distinctive anymore to that degree. So that's sad, and that's just based on. It's just too easy, I guess. It's harder to look up people. It could be bias. It could be, it's a lot of things. So I guess it's just left up for us, the artists, which is hard because we're not business people to that extent. Some of us are, Sam Cooke was a businessman, he knew how to do it.
Right.
Not all of us, most of us we just want to play, and we'll give it away for free and then wind up broke because we just want to play.
Right.
But or it's just not a lot. People like Ice Cube, who was just smart, who took just went all different directions. You know, you just don't have that as much today amongst artists. So we have to rely on, and we were getting close with the whole iTunes and the whole digital thing, where it was more back in our hands, but now it's being taken out of our hands again. And now we're left up to just chugging along.
Yeah.
playing gigs here, playing gigs there, playing, you know, just wherever we can. And then we get a cool gig, we promote it. And, you know, it's frustrating, but for me, I'm glad that what I do is effective and people, it seems to touch people. So I'm like, okay, I'm happy. At least I can do that.
Yeah.
You got guys who out there who are just really good, but you have guys out there who are phenomenal who you don't know about, and they need to be known. So anyway.
Well, and I think too that, you know, just to anyone listening or watching, go out there and discover some of the old stuff and some of the new stuff. I mean, it's worth it. And more importantly, come see Brother Yusef at the Studio Cabaret, because he is phenomenal. One of the things that the foundation does besides present programs or performances is we always like to try and mentor and encourage young upcoming artists, because like we were saying, you know, they're kind of hard to discover. What words of advice would you give to a young artist trying to come up?
Oh. I don't know. What would I tell myself? Listen to everything. Just listen to everything. Don't just listen to your contemporaries. Please do not do that. Go back and hear what cats were doing way back when, and listen to Bob Dylan, listen to early Eric Clapton, listen to Motown, listen to Smokey Robinson, you know, listen to all these great artists who you may not have heard. I mean, I'm gonna tell you a story. It's interesting. I had the chance of opening up for James Brown, and I was telling a gentleman about this experience, and the young girl sitting next to him was his daughter, got wide-eyed and said, "You mean you opened up for Chris Brown?" I said, "No, James Brown." And she said, "Who is that?" If you're going to be an artist, don't ask. I mean, dig it up. I've had that happen before. I asked someone my daughter's age. My daughter's 26. This one, my daughter's about maybe 20. Her friend. I said, "Yeah." I told her the same thing. James Brown. She didn't know who James Brown was. You know, I'm just like, excuse, what? So, you have, as an artist, I believe you have a responsibility to understand who was who before you. Smokey Robinson, I heard, made that point at an award ceremony. He was telling a lot of artists in the audience, "You're not the beginning, and you're definitely not the end. So quit acting like you were the beginning of everything. There's people that came before you who did everything you did and beyond." Sadly, this is my opinion, we're in the era of the non-musician musicians, you know, where people didn't take time to really hone their craft to performing and playing that instrument. You got cats in the band Earth, Wind, and Fire that can play everything. Jolly Hooker, on one of his albums, because he was from Detroit, one of his albums, the guys that played on the album were Motown musicians. They were just doing session work for Johnny Hooker, and they played you know what I'm saying? So if you want what you're doing to be rich, go look to the past, you know, because what you will doing, if you do not do that, will be musically thin. And the sad part about it is 50 years later from now, people will come along and won't even study you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then you can imagine but it's the people who study. So go back and study, and then listen to your soul, and then, you know, continue on your journey, you know. So hope that makes sense.
Your point is well taken about the non-musician music industry, because one of the things we do every year is we have a talent competition, South Bay's Got Talent. And we have some extraordinarily young, gifted kids come in and perform. So a lot of them write their own stuff and play their, you know, self-learn the ukulele or guitar, drums, or whatever. This one kid comes out for the auditions and sets a laptop on the stool and hits play. That was his audition. And there was like some electronic beat. I mean, it was good, but that's not to me, that wasn't being a musician. That was, or a musical talent. That was hitting a couple buttons right.
Right. I agree. And, I see that a lot, and it's like, okay, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
But it's sad that that's the case, or the sort of the direction that it's going now is you got to learn the craft before you can do anything.
It's just cheaper and easier, I guess, for the marketplace. Cheaper
It's
and
like
easier.
people say it's the computers are a blessing and a curse because it gives the tools of the professional. It puts the tools of the professional in the hands of the amateur.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And I'm not saying you have to learn how to be a virtuoso, because you might just be a decent piano player, but if you're a vocalist or if you're a writer, whatever it is, just study people who did the crap before you did.
Yeah.
And then you could do what you do. It'll just be, because I mean, a lot of people don't like rap. But there's some artists that really did it right. Like, like people like Dr. Dre and all those guys. Hip hop is interesting because again, it was born out of these conditions, and where music was taken out of the schools, so there was no ability to study music. But again, you want to express your humanity. So what these guys did was they just created a whole new art form with old music. They would take their parents' records and do all kind of things with them and talk over them, and even the scratching. That's pretty slick. That's just rhythm right there.
Yeah.
So these guys studied the past too, and they just created a new genre, which is rich in some degree. In some degrees, it's not, like everything else. But so since music is not in a lot of the schools, it really isn't. It is, but it just depends on the school and the community. Just study, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
You want to be an athlete, you really should study, before you came along, so you can see what where you see the progression. So, yeah.
Well, this has been I actually am really looking forward to your performance. I mean, we have lots more to talk about, but unfortunately we're out of time.
Oh, sorry.
So I urge people to come to Brother Yusef's blues class on March 6th and 7th at the Nakano Theater. It's going to be an exceptional evening. It's an intimate venue, just perfect for this kind of a show. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes. Thank you.